The announcement sets the stage. In the early hours of a crisp autumn morning, the nation stirred under the weight of anticipation. Across countless cities, the hum of activity began as usual, yet there lingered a palpable sense of unease in the air. People scrolled through their phones, the latest headlines flashing on screens, until one announcement dominated every platform, every feed, every conversation. President Donald J. Trump was set to make a major nationwide address, promising a bold new approach to the escalating crime. Hot-gripped communities from coast to coast, news outlets speculated, social media exploded with predictions, and analysts weighed in on the potential magnitude of what was to come. Yet no one could predict the exact shape of the initiativa, only that the president's words would carry a message unlike any other in recent memory. The Oval Office was quiet that morning, the only sounds, the soft shuffle of papers and the distant tick of a clock on the wall. President Trump sat at the resolute desk reviewing notes, his expression a mix of stern determination and deliberate calculation. The stakes were high. Crime rates had surged in several urban centers. Incidents of violent offenses, organized criminal activity were trending upwards, and public confidence in law enforcement was wavering in some areas. Trump's administration had faced criticism for previous approaches, but this announcement, insiders suggested, would signal a significant pivot, a nationwide crime crackdown designed to reshape public perception and establish a new paradigm of law and order. The press corps gathered outside the White House. A sea of cameras and microphones pointed towards the entrance. Journalists speculated about what measures would be proposed: stricter policing, expanded federal involvement, technology-driven surveillance, tougher sentencing, or perhaps a combination of. The chatter was relentless, echoing across networks and online platforms. Alike in every newsroom, analysts debated the potential implications. Would this be a turning point for public safety, or would it stir controversy that could dominate headlines for weeks to come? Inside the West Wing, the president's advisors moved with quiet efficiency. Each recommendation was carefully considered, weighed for political feasibility, legal soundness, and public perception. The strategy was meticulous: emphasize strong action, reassure law-abiding citizens, challenge criminal elements, and rally support among the administration's base. Every word of the address had been drafted and revised multiple times. Behind the scenes, aides understood the delicate balance. An announcement that was too aggressive could provoke backlash. One that seemed too soft could erode credibility. Trump, however, was resolute. The message had to be unequivocal, the tone authoritative, the promise of action immediate. As the hour approached, the tension built visibly across the nation. Social media algorithms buzzed. Trending hashtags emerged in anticipation, and cable networks shifted to live coverage. Citizens in small towns and major metropolises alike paused to watch, driven by a mix of curiosity and concern. In the nation's capital, streets were unusually crowded, a blend of supporters and skeptics gathering to witness history in the making. The atmosphere was electric, yet there was also an undercurrent of apprehension. What would this mean for the communities already struggling with economic and social pressures? When the president finally emerged onto the podium, the backdrop of the American flag cast a symbolic weight over the scene. Cameras captured every gesture, every nuance of expression, from the slight furrow of his brow to the confident stride that carried him to the microphone. Trump began his address, his voice resonating with the authority of his office. The cadence measured, the message deliberate. The announcement unfolded as more than a policy statement. It was a carefully choreographed moment designed to command attention, shape public perception, and define the administration's narrative on crime. Trump outlined the nationwide crime crackdown in stark terms. Federal resources would be mobilized in unprecedented ways. Law enforcement agencies at local, state, and national levels would be empowered with new tools and directives. Criminal organizations, street gangs, and violent offenders would face increased scrutiny, stricter enforcement, and more severe consequences. The president emphasized the dual goal of protecting citizens and restoring confidence in public institutions, framing the crackdown as both a practical and symbolic effort to assert control over a rising tide of lawlessness. The announcement was accompanied by detailed plans for strategic deployment, data-driven policing initiatives, and the integration of emerging technologies for surveillance and predictive analytics. Funding allocations, legislative proposals, and administrative directives were highlighted, signaling that this was not merely a rhetorical statement, but a tangible blueprint for action. The president's voice carried a mixture of urgency and reassurance, a deliberate attempt to appeal to both concerned citizens and political supporters. Across the country, reactions poured in. Analysts dissected every line of the speech, weighing the feasibility of the proposed measures, examining potential legal challenges, and speculating on political ramifications. Citizens debated in forums, social media exploded with commentary, and local news outlets highlighted community perspectives. Some praised the decisive approach, viewing it as a necessary intervention to curb crime and restore safety. Others expressed skepticism, concerned about civil liberties oversight and the potential for overreach. Yet one thing was undeniable. The president had successfully captured the nation's attention, setting the stage for a significant shift in the public conversation around crime and governance. As the address concluded, the camera lingered on Trump's determined expression, a visual seal on the promise of action. The words echoed in households, offices, and public spaces. A nationwide crackdown was coming. Enforcement would be aggressive, and the administration would act swiftly to implement its vision. The gravity of the moment was palpable, a clear signal that the issue of crime had been elevated to the highest level of government concern. Citizens across the nation absorbed the details, pondered the implications, and anticipated the changes that would soon affect their neighborhoods, their streets, and their daily lives. And so, with the announcement made, the nation stood at the threshold of a new chapter in its approach to law and order. The stage had been set, the policies outlined, and the challenge issued in the days to come. The administration would move from rhetoric to execution, translating the promises of the president's speech into tangible actions that would ripple through communities, law enforcement agencies, and the broader political landscape. Yet, as history has often shown, the transition from announcement to implementation would be fraught with complexities, unforeseen obstacles, and the unpredictable consequences that accompany any major governmental initiative. A story was only beginning. The nation had heard the call, the blueprint had been unveiled, and the anticipation of action filled the air. What would follow would test the administration's resolve, the capabilities of law enforcement, and the patience of a public eager for change. And as the first waves of implementation began to ripple outward, every eye, every ear, every observer would be watching to see whether the promises of the president's announcement would translate into a new era of safety and order, or whether unforeseen challenges would reshape the narrative in ways no one had anticipated. Following the president's announcement, the gears of government began to turn with extraordinary speed. In Washington, the corridors of federal agencies buzzed with activity. Analysts and field agents working tirelessly to interpret the mandates into operational directives. The Department of Justice, FBI, DEA, and other federal entities convened emergency briefings, coordinating plans to integrate local law enforcement with federal oversight. Priority lists were drawn up, targeting organized criminal networks, violent offenders, and regions with rising crime statistics. Intelligence teams pored over data, connecting patterns and pinpointing locations where interventions would have the most immediate effect. Across the country, law enforcement agencies braced themselves for the unprecedented campaign. Police chiefs, sheriffs, and mayors absorbed the president's words, weighing how to deploy personnel, allocate resources, and communicate with citizens. In major metropolitan areas, precincts convened rapid response meetings, identifying high crime districts for intensified patrols. In smaller towns, officers anticipated federal collaboration, aware that their communities might be the first to experience concentrated enforcement efforts. The atmosphere was one of heightened vigilance, each department aware that the nation's eyes were upon them. Meanwhile, analysts on cable news dissected the practical implications of the president's address. Segments highlighted the integration of cutting-edge surveillance technologies, predictive policing models, and enhanced interagency communication networks. Social media commentators speculated on the balance between public safety and civil liberties, while political pundits debated whether the crackdown would galvanize support or fuel opposition. Yet in the field, the work of implementation was what truly mattered. The abstract promises of policy giving way to actionable operations. Federal resources flowed into key regions. Task forces were formed, combining local officers with federal agents, creating rapid response teams equipped with advanced technology and intelligence capabilities. Drones, surveillance cameras, and predictive algorithms were deployed in selected cities, mapping patterns of criminal activity and providing real-time insights to officers on the ground. Training programs were accelerated, ensuring that personnel could respond quickly, legally, and effectively. It was an unprecedented mobilization, a logistical feat designed to demonstrate the seriousness of the president's commitment. Public messaging accompanied the operational efforts. Citizens received briefings and advisories emphasizing cooperation with law enforcement, the importance of community reporting, and the reassurance that aggressive action would target criminal elements, not law-abiding individuals. Media campaigns emphasized the dual goals of the crackdown: safeguarding communities and restoring trust in institutions. Every step was carefully crafted to maintain public confidence, projecting an image of competence, resolve, and accountability. Yet, even as strategies were implemented, challenges emerged. Cities with high crime rates presented complex logistical puzzles, requiring careful coordination to avoid overreach. Officers in the field navigated neighborhoods wary of federal presence, balancing the need for enforcement with sensitivity to community dynamics. Analysts monitored every action, adjusting plans based on real-time feedback, while political advisors ensured that messaging remained aligned with the president's narrative. It was a delicate dance, an exercise in precision execution across a landscape defined by unpredictability. The first wave of operations demonstrated the impact of coordinated action. Key arrests were made, organized criminal networks disrupted, and intelligence gathered that would inform subsequent interventions. Citizens reported increased police visibility and responsiveness, and media coverage highlighted the tangible results of the president's directives. At the same time, questions arose about the sustainability of such aggressive enforcement and The potential long-term effects on community relations. Every action taken was scrutinized, every outcome analyzed. As the nation watched closely to see whether the promises of the address would translate into measurable results. As the initial phase of the crackdown unfolded, the administration emphasized transparency and accountability. Reports detailing operations, arrests, and enforcement patterns were released to the public, highlighting the scale and precision of the efforts. Analysts praised the clarity of communication, while critics warned that the focus on immediate results might overshadow systemic solutions. Despite differing opinions, one fact remained undeniable. The nationwide crime crackdown was now an operational reality, moving beyond rhetoric into concrete action. The groundwork had been laid, the first strategies deployed, and the nation's gaze fixed on the unfolding operations. What began as a presidential announcement was now a living, breathing initiative with tangible effects in communities large and small. Yet even as successes were recorded, the administration remained aware that this was only the beginning, that the complexities of crime, law enforcement, and societal response would test the limits of the president's ambitious vision. As the crackdown expanded, the nation responded in a chorus of approval, concern, and intense debate. Citizens across urban centers praised the visible presence of law enforcement, the quick arrests of notorious criminals, and the apparent reduction in street violence. Boston neighborhoods, long plagued by fear and instability, residents noted a renewed sense of safety, reporting that streets were calmer, communities were quieter, and local businesses were beginning to thrive again. News segments highlighted these stories, painting a picture of progress and effectiveness, reinforcing the president's message of decisive action. Yet, along with the praise came skepticism and criticism. Civil rights organizations raised alarms about potential overreach, questioning whether predictive policing, surveillance technology, and increased federal involvement might infringe upon constitutional protections. Legal experts debated the scope of authority granted to federal task forces, while political opponents accused the administration of prioritizing optics over sustainable reform. Social media platforms became arenas of heated debate, with citizens sharing anecdotes, news clips, and opinion pieces that reflected a polarized landscape. Political dynamics intensified as well. Senators, governors, and city leaders weighed in, some supporting the crackdown and advocating for continued federal coordination, others warning of potential abuses of power and the risk of alienating communities. Legislative sessions debated amendments and oversight measures, creating a parallel narrative alongside the operational enforcement. In Washington, briefings shifted from strategy to defense, ensuring that the administration's actions were legally sound and publicly justifiable. In the streets, the impact of the crackdown was unmistakable. Officers on patrol reported measurable declines in certain tip-off crime, while gangs and criminal organizations adjusted their behavior. In response to the heightened presence of law enforcement, intelligence units noted shifts in criminal networks, identifying new patterns and vulnerabilities. Citizens began to engage more actively with local authorities, reporting suspicious activity and participating in community safety initiatives. The nationwide effort was producing tangible results, yet it also revealed the complexity of balancing enforcement with civil liberties and community trust. Media coverage became increasingly nuanced. Highlight reels emphasized arrests, successful operations, and high-profile interventions, while investigative segments explored unintended consequences, procedural questions, and long-term sustainability. Analysts debated whether the crackdown represented a short-term surge, a fantasy shift in crime prevention strategy. Across platforms, audiences engaged with the unfolding narrative, interpreting events through personal, political, and social lenses. The administration's challenge was to maintain credibility while navigating a landscape of scrutiny, skepticism, and approval in near equal measure. Behind the scenes, the president monitored the reaction closely. Advisors provided updates on public sentiment, political support, and operational effectiveness, ensuring that messaging remained aligned with results on the ground. Adjustments were made where necessary, highlighting successes, mitigating controversies, and reinforcing the narrative of decisive action. The administration's communications team worked tirelessly, crafting updates that underscored the nationwide impact of the crackdown and framed opposition as a challenge to public safety. Despite the tensions, the initiative continued to expand. New regions were identified for targeted enforcement, federal resources allocated to ensure rapid implementation, and interagency coordination refined to maximize effectiveness. Training programs were updated to address community concerns, while intelligence networks deepened, providing ever more detailed insights into criminal behavior. It was a cycle of action, feedback, and adjustment, an evolving operation responding to both practical realities and public perception. As weeks passed, the nation began to see patterns emerging from the crackdown. Crime statistics showed measurable declines in specific urban centers, while anecdotal evidence suggested renewed confidence in public spaces. Communities reported increased engagement with law enforcement, and political figures adjusted their positions in response to the visible impact of federal initiatives. Yet the story was far from complete, and challenges persisted. Critics remained vigilant. Unexpected complications arose, and the administration had to navigate a landscape that was as unpredictable as it was consequential. The nationwide crime crackdown was no longer an abstract promise. It had become a defining feature of the political and socio landscape. Citizens, analysts, and officials alike understood that this was a pivotal moment, a period in which leadership, enforcement, and public engagement would converge to shape the future of safety in America. The successes were tangible, the controversies unavoidable, and the narrative continuing to evolve in real time. The fourth phase of the nationwide crime crackdown was marked by precision and spectacle. Federal and local authorities coordinated high-profile operations aimed at dismantling organized crime networks that had long eluded law enforcement. Raids were executed with military-style efficiency, targeting known gang leaders, drug traffickers, and violent offenders. Surveillance footage, carefully vetted and released through media channels, highlighted the meticulous planning behind every operation, reinforcing the image of an administration committed to unrelenting action. Cities across the nation experienced a visible intensification of law enforcement. Streets that had once been dominated by illicit activity were now patrolled constantly. Officers employing a combination of traditional policing and modern technology to monitor hotspots. Intelligence units tracked criminal movements in real time, deploying personnel strategically to disrupt operations before they could escalate. Citizens noted the increased presence of law enforcement vehicles, checkpoints, and community engagement initiatives, signaling that the crackdown was reaching deeper into the fabric of daily life. The results of these operations were immediate and dramatic. High-profile arrests dominated news cycles, exposing criminal hierarchies and revealing previously hidden networks. Large-scale seizures of contraband, illegal firearms, and illicit funds sent a clear message: criminal activity would not be tolerated. Analysts highlighted the tactical brilliance of coordinated raids, while social media amplified the spectacle. Blending awe, fear, and intrigue, the administration framed these victories as tangible proof of the president's promise, reinforcing public confidence in the crackdown. Yet with visibility came scrutiny. Civil rights groups, legal advocates, and political opponents questioned the methods used in certain operations, citing concerns over due process, proportionality. The administration responded by emphasizing transparency, documenting procedures, and demonstrating adherence to legal protocols. Every detail of execution was meticulously logged. Every operation subjected to internal review, as the balance between effective enforcement and public accountability remained a central focus. The impact on criminal organizations was immediate. Networks that had thrived in the shadows were destabilized. Communication lines disrupted and leadership structures weakened. Street gangs, drug cartels, and organized crime rings scrambled to adapt to the new reality of nationwide enforcement. Intelligence gathered during raids provided insights that informed subsequent interventions, creating a feedback loop of strategy, execution, and adaptation. The administration's ability to combine resources, technology, and intelligence marked a turning point in the fight against crime. While the public remained engaged, communities that had experienced years of fear, uncertainty reported renewed confidence, while urban centers noted decreases in violent incidents. Local business owners expressed cautious optimism, seeing streets become safer and neighborhoods more accessible. Media coverage highlighted these developments, framing the crackdown as a nationwide effort, producing measurable outcomes, while also acknowledging the ongoing challenges of sustaining momentum and maintaining community trust. The operations underscored a central theme of the administration's approach: the integration of strategic planning, federal coordination, and local engagement. Every action was calculated to produce maximum effect, while minimizing unintended consequences. Yet the complexity of the undertaking ensured that no success came without challenges, and every victory was accompanied by questions, debate, and anticipation of the next move in a dynamic, evolving initiative. As the nationwide crackdown reached its peak, the political stakes became increasingly pronounced. Congressional hearings, gubernatorial briefings, and city council sessions were dominated by discussions of strategy, oversight, and effectiveness. Senators debated appropriations, legal authority, and civil liberties, while governors and mayors weighed the practical implications of coordinating with federal task forces. The president's messaging remained consistent, emphasizing action, results, and accountability. Yet the intensity of scrutiny reflected the complexity of executing a nationwide initiative of this scale. Public opinion evolved alongside operational developments. Polls indicated rising approval among citizens concerned with safety, yet skepticism persisted among those wary of federal overreach or the prioritization of enforcement over social programs.